I don't know if this is recording. Voleplaying Games is back. I'm still developing the Illeara campaign, and it's actually going pretty well. I've had some new ideas. I just had them today. That's how new they are. They are today years old. And I went through a period where I was like, do I really want to? Maybe I want to be playing D&D instead of Tunnels and Trolls. Especially old D&D, and I'm still not completely convinced that I probably might be interested in running Cyclopedia or BECME or Dungeon Crawl Classics, another big favorite of mine. Let's see. I also messed around with this Mutant Crawl Classics micro campaign. That was a lot of fun. These are some of the characters. I do myself. Yeah, I got a couple of pages here. Okay. I had this idea that there's a lot of silliness in Tunnels and Trolls and the allowed races. If you look at what they consider the standard races in Tunnels and Trolls, you might be surprised at what the standard is. Let me just tell you what it is. Okay, here it is. Humans, right? Okay, that makes sense. Dwarves make sense, except they don't in Tunnels and Trolls. Dwarves in Tunnels and Trolls are like made out of stone. They are the descendants of the ancient wizard Gristlegrim. He created them. So it's very campaign specific. So I will not be using the Gristlegrim dwarves. They offer an option: Midgard dwarves from the ancient world of from Asgard or Midgard. I don't want to use those either. Neither one of those fits with my campaign. So also, dwarves are a bit overpowered in Tunnels and Trolls in that they get double strength and constitution. So when you roll your dice, your 3d6 for your stat right off, you double them. If you roll a 15, you double it. You get a 30, you got a third level character. Whoa! So let's eliminate dwarves. It's got elves. Of course, it's got elves. This dwarves and elves, basically, they come from Tolkien. As a goal, I'm not specifically using Tolkien in this campaign. Maybe there are Tolkien elements. Okay, then the next character race is fairies. Fairies are an interesting race. They are very cool. They do get a double wizardry multiplier. So if you roll a 15, you would double that to 30. But they look at their compensations. Their strength is a quarter. So that means, let's say you rolled a 16 for strength. Well, that becomes a 4. A 4 strength. Let's say you rolled a 6, and the same thing is it's a quarter for your con too, and that's your hit points. If you rolled a 16, it becomes a 4. Now, more likely you're rolling a 9 or a 10, and so that divided by 4 would be 2. You probably have a 2 in Constitution or a 2 in Strength. However it all works out, I am in favor of allowing the fairies to live. So let's write this down. I'm going to create allowable races in Illeara. This is specific to my world, right? Humans. See below. I'm going to do something special with humans. Next up, dwarves, not allowed. Elves, you have 3 choices. You have elves, Varte, which are the dark elves of Tunnels and Trolls, and half-elves. By the way, they also include half-dwarves. I also would allow Uruks, which are orcs. They're not in here, by the way. So Uruks are in there, and which could also include Uruks or Urukin, which is the half-orc. Okay, so I'm allowing those. Humans, elves, orcs. All right, what's the next one on here? I'm allowing the fairies. Let's put the fairies in there. Hobbs, which are hobbs are hobbits, halflings. I'm in favor. What did I just drop over there? The next one on the list is leprechauns, and I am dropping those out. I know I've been using Farah as a leprechaun as in my little test group. I am thinking of dropping him out or converting him to something else. The leprechauns are somewhat cool. They gave them a counterpart in the gremlin. The gremlin and the leprechauns are two sides of the same coin. They have some strong compensations of a 0.3 for strength, so it gets reduced. They also start with the Wink Wing spell, which is a teleport spell. Doesn't mean they're able to cast it, because you're going to need... I think you need the right stats to be able to cast it. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, you know what? They have the innate ability to teleport themselves short distances. It's a natural Wink Wink spell. They don't have to have the stat for it. Okay, so we're dropping leprechauns. No more leprechauns. Doesn't make sense. But what else is there? Now, I already added Urikins, which are not standard. They have this thing called the Peters McAllister chart, named after Bear Peters. I don't know who McAllister is, but I have met Bear Peters, actually. And they have them divided into the good kindreds, which are the player character ones, and this is where Hobbs and dwarves and all are on there. Then they have the familiar Illikin, and these characters could be played. They're not wildly overpowered, however, you may wish to disallow. Included in here are things like centaurs. I'm going to say no. Dak. I don't know what a Dak is. I think that's an 8-man. Gnomes. I am in favor of gnomes. Let's add gnomes to the list. Gremlins. I am dropping gremlins out, but I am going to leave goblins in. Now, their version of goblin is not the same as mine. Their goblins are like amphibious. Alright, we've already added our half-elves and Urikin half-orcs. By the way, as an oversight, they've left Urikin out, and I've just used the half-blood template, which they had specifically for half-elves and dwelfs, which are dwarf elves. Very curious, because they've already said that dwarves are coming from this one specific bloodline, and I don't see how they would be interbreeding with elves. They have hobgoblins, and their kobolds in Tunnels and Trolls are also very weird. The kobold version in Tunnels and Trolls is not the D&D kobold. That kobold that D&D uses is kind of specific to D&D. The kobold that Tunnels and Trolls uses is the original folklore-based kobold that can shape change. So I'm going to say no. However, well, okay, here's the deal. I like the idea of a dragonling, and I think I even saw it in the Monsterary of Zimrala. Let me take a look. I have... This is the successor of Tunnels and Trolls, by the way, Monsters. This is Ken St. Andre's game. And there's an interesting thing that happened here. When Rick Loomis passed away, tragically, Ken said something. He said basically, let's see. I'm looking for it over here. He basically says, Tunnels and Trolls really isn't my game anymore. Very excited to bring this to you. He's not against it, but he's just saying, it's not my game anymore. This one still is. So he still owns Monsters, which uses the exact same ones. But it doesn't use classes. If you're going to be a monster, you don't get a class. You're just a monster. They have all these things in here. But here's a Mallardian, alright, which is basically Mallardorian. It's a duck person, and I think duck people do belong in Tunnels and Trolls. For some reason, they ended up in the very ultra-serious RuneQuest. So I definitely want to add... Okay, let's add... Mallardorians. or duck people, duck folk. That's definitely going to be part of this campaign. But I think there's some others in here. Let's take a look. I definitely want to add... Let's see. Guards. I love the gargoyles. The only power that they get, they're very actually... the only real advantage that they get is the ability to fly. They actually have very reasonable stats. Okay, let's say their goblins live near water and they can stay underwater. I think that we would change that back to be more a bit more D&D, or really a bit more Tolkien, which, you know, you've already heard me say I'm not a big fan of. They also have frogers, which are ogres, and I think their ogres are somewhat reasonable. Let me take a look. Their version of the Hroger, or the ogre, it's basically the exact same as the dwarf. It's got double strength and con, as well as double charisma for some reason, and they're likable, so they can make friends, which seems weird. Okay, so let's see. Human, we're going to leave Hrogers off. Living statues, we're going to leave off. Although, yeah, we're going to leave those off. Minotaurs, nope. I'm leaving off all the trolls, that's Ken's thing. Ratlings. I do like the ratlings. That should be a playable race. What else? Okay, vampires. Their vampire is very reasonable, but I don't think I'm going to use their vampire and their were-creatures. I'll use them as monsters, but I don't think they're going to be PCs. There's the Uruks, Yeti, zombies. Okay, we're not going to allow those as CCs either. Okay, so that's the Monsters book, and then this supplement for Monsters is the Monsterary of Zimrala, which is this new world, this new island continent that opens up on the original Troll world, and it has basically, it's like a monster manual. It's got all these monsters in it, but included in the monster manual, if you keep going towards the back, it starts to include intelligent monsters, which are playable species. And they have bat trolls, which I'm not allowing. It's quite a list. There's the Bullsark, which is basically a minotaur. The Curators, which are basically aliens. I really like that. Flame Troll, Golems, Ghouls. I like the idea of Hawkmen, and I think it's the same. Let's take a look at their stats over here. Strength ×2. Charisma ×2. Everything else looks reasonable. I am going to allow it. So let's say Hawkmen are allowed. And I'm sure they're like the gargoyles, they can fly. They also have Gorgons or Medusas, not allowed. Dryads, no. Armlings, too crazy for me. Spatcher, Brighthead, too crazy for me. Mole Peoples, too crazy for me. Stalker, that's a little bit too crazy for me as well. It's like Talislanta stuff. Moon Elf, we're already allowing elves. Nagas or Serpent Men. Let's take a look at the stats. Actually, super reasonable. Double intelligence. That's the only, and charisma. That's the only thing that looks. Oh, it says Naga are always wizards. It kind of makes sense. I think they're a little bit too ancient. I would call my Nagas different. I would call them the ancient ones. These are the Reyriki. This might be a little bit more. They're Snake Men. Well, they seem real specific. Maybe in a special campaign. Of course, we can always break our own rules. Like when we're setting up the rules here, we can always break our own rules. There's a turtle humanoid. Tigerians. I like that. I like that they use the TY spelling. That's from Blake, William Blake. It's obviously way out of stat because it's got strength ×5, con ×6. They're meant to be monsters. There's another snake race, the Waji, Cobra Women. The Zim, the Zimralan equivalent to trolls. I don't know what those are. And then they've got the were-creatures. Okay, so what's missing over here? Lizardmen. I like lizardmen, and we're going to... Oh, and there's a couple that we didn't add. One of those is pixies. Pixies are insect-like. While fairies have insect-like wings, pixies are full insect when you see them. Which I like that idea. And one of my playtest characters I used was an insect. Now you can see unfortunately I've ripped the paper out accidentally. Harpies, frogers, lizard folk. I've got it in here. Nope, I don't have it in here yet. I do like lizard folk. Let's make sure they're in. They are well within the range of a playable race, in my opinion. Same with ratlings. They have such interesting stuff. The Polycani they're dog centaurs or wolf centaurs. It's such a cool idea. And then they get really crazy with demons, dragons. They add at the extraordinary end of things, they actually add the gargoyle back here, the gargs. And there's no reason. It's the toughest thing they get is 1.75 times strength. And that is not out of stat for me. There's giants, man-apes. There's the giants and man-apes are like multiples of 5 for strength and con. It's like, that's way out. Okay, I think we've got it for all of the playable races. But I've left this star here for the humans, and this is my idea. I had the idea, this is the idea that I had, is that, and I do this in D&D, by the way, too. I do this for my Encyclopedia Basic campaign. In my campaign, hang on, I have different cultures of humans. Right? So if you look at it's probably more or less on the big map, but you've got some that are like folkloric German, right? And that's also the starting area of Helmtraud is folkloric German. 21 German folklore. But I've also got classical Greek Roman. I've got a French group. I have a Dwarven Kingdom here. I'm gonna have to bring dwarves back. I'm gonna have to do my own version of it, or I'll just change it. Maybe it's not a Dwarven Kingdom at all. Let's call it a Goblin Kingdom. See, I don't even know my own stuff. There's an Elven Kingdom. There's some islands. Islands. I've got some barbarians. Okay. So, I'm looking at my stuff. Oh, I've got a classical Persian in there, too. Barbarians. There's another Dwarven Kingdom. All the dwarven areas are becoming... This one's going to be an Uruk kingdom. Okay. I've got English, French, medieval England. I've got a medieval Swiss. This Swiss area... It's going back to medieval England. Scottish Celt, medieval Russian, German. Okay. So, for my basic D&D campaign... especially the Victory or Death one, I had basically 6 groups, and my original groups were Vikings, Arthurians, Achaeans, which are Greco-Roman. I had like this Asiatic one that I can't remember what it was, Cathaean, I think it was, Barbarians, and there was one more. Oh, Celts. So Arthurians and Celts. And the Celts would be more like the Druidic or, Irish, Scottish, Celtic tribes, while the Arthurians were a bit more advanced, chivalry and romance kind of group, which would be analogous to our medieval France type group, right? And our medieval Russian type. So I've got these different groups. And I also have a Lost World Pleistocene area. So that would be barbarians, I think. But anyways, let's go through the list, right? So Neanderthal. Right? That's going to be one human race. And instead of giving them multipliers, which is standard for Tunnels and Trolls, I'm just going to give them a +2 stat bonus in one stat. It won't be enough to make you choose one over the other, but it's an interesting choice. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay, folkloric German. um, medieval Russian, so folkloric German, we're going to call the Helms. Um, I think we're just going to call them. I wonder what to call them, like the Nords. I was thinking about using the word Bretons for our English ones, but folkloric German we're going to call. Let's look something up. I'm going to do some brainstorming here. What? Okay, we're back looking at our old friend ChatGPT. I want to create a Tunnels and Trolls campaign where the human cultures are analogs of various real world cultures. For example, I have a couple of Greco-Roman kingdoms, and I am going to call them that group Caens. What name would you suggest for a German-based group? And then we see what it comes up with. I know there's one. That sounds like a fun and creative idea. Okay, Teutons. Oh, that's perfect. Excellent. Okay, so Neanderthal, Teutons, right? And let's take a look at our list here. Folkloric German. Oh, they've also got Goths. The Visigoth, the Ostrogoths, the Goths, Franks. The Franks are also Germanic. Okay. I'm set for the Teutons. Okay. Okay, great. I love Teutons. What would you suggest? What would you suggest for a group based on... I think I have both folkloric and medieval France. But I've got medieval French here, and folkloric French. Medieval or folkloric France. Don't let me down. Lemon, the Gauls. It makes sense, like the Gallic. Okay. All right, let's Teutons, Gauls, and each one of these groups, right, is going to have their own equipment list. Like they have certain types of armor and weapons that they're able to buy, or that they would be naturally drawn to buy. And each group was going to have their own list, I thought, and that would keep everybody in their own kind of unique costume. Normans. This name from the name of the Norsemen or Vikings who settled in the region of Normandy in northern France. Well, we've got that. Neanderthals, Teutons, Gauls. I also want Celts. Makes sense to me. And I also want Arthurians for England, at least for the actually, I use the Arthurians for France as well, for the I don't know if it's folkloric or medieval. I like them both. So, alright, so... And then finally... I want something based on, like, Turkey or... Okay. How about a group based on... Do I have Turkey in here? Classical Persian or Turkey? Now, obviously, Turk is an easy one. Okay, it's suggesting Parthian. I've never heard of that one. Well, I don't know. Middle East and Central Asia. The Seljuks. I like that one. I know that one. What else you got? The Sassanids, and I knew about the Sassanids. I know that that's a good one to do too. But okay, but I'm gonna say the Seljuks. And later on, if we were to expand this campaign and we wanted to say like add in some, far Asian tropes, we would come up with Cathayan or something else. We would have some other thing in there. But I like the Seljuks, Arthurians, Celts. Okay, now what do we give them all? Let's give our Neanderthals +2 strength, and our Teutons +2 con. The Gauls +2 speed. The Celts, let's give them +1 and +1. +1 charisma. +1 wizardry. Arthurians +2 charisma. Oh, I've left my Achaeans off here. I'm gonna give Seljuks +2 IQ or intelligence. Let's leave our Achaeans over here on the edge. And give them a +2 to... What can I give it to them in? Here are the stats. Strength, Dex, Con... Alright, moving forward, now we've got our allowable races. What about the monster races that we just listed all over here? Do they slot into these cultures? I think the answer is probably yes to a degree. For example, fairies and pixies probably fit well into the Arthurian and the Celtic group. So we could put a note here. Arthurian or Celtic? Usually. Hobbs? We're going to say that Hobbs are... I think Hobbs are probably usually Celts or Gauls. Celts, Gauls. Gnomes or Teutons. Gnomes are going to replace my dwarves. Goblins, Neanderthal, Barbarian. Oh, I gotta put Barbarian in here too. Barbarian. The Barbarian's supposed to be like Conan, the Cimmerian. So... let's put Barbarian. Yeah. Now the monster races do not get the little stat bonus, but they do get a equipment list to buy from that will match something. Our Malardians are going to be Gauls, Arthurians, or I love the idea of Achaean. Duckfolk. Gargs are definitely barbarians. Ratlings. Celts or barbarians. Or Neanderthal. Primitives. Hawkman. I like the idea of the Hawkman being Neanderthal or barbarian or let's look at Neanderthals. Neanderthal or barbarian. Lizardmen, barbarian for sure. And then Uruks or barbarians. Elves. Arthurian, Celt. There are Arthurians, Celts. I notice I haven't given much to the Seljuks here, so let's give them Seljuks as well. So these cultural tags will allow you to have a bit of a clue about how you dress and equip your character, right? So that they have sort of a sort of cultural flavor to them. And I first came across this idea in the D&D box set Hollow World. And unfortunately I've sold off my physical copy, but I think I might still have a PDF, but I'll see if I can find it and I'll show it to you. Alright, it turns out I do have a copy of Hollow World. So let me bring it over here. Hopefully you can see this. Yes, this is Aaron Alston's Hollow World, and back in the day, this to me was kind of like the gold standard for how you set up a campaign, like an old school campaign. More so than Greyhawk for me was Hollow World, and it's not super old either. It goes back to 1990. But what I really liked about it was they called this, see if it's in the table of contents here. I think they're called, I think it's in page 123. So let's see if I can get to that page. Player characters in Hollow World. They have, here it is. Cultural bias. Hollow World characters have to cope with something called cultural bias. It's an important effect of the spell of preservation. It affects all characters born there. It inhibits their curiosity, preventing them from throwing off their ancient traditions and adopting the customs and weapons of other races, such as those of the player characters. Now, I don't like to force a situation like that, but I do like the idea that you would have the characters wearing their cultural costumes. So, and I have a couple of examples in here. They have some spells that don't work. Yeah, some races wear no armor or only leather armor. If you, because they have like the Otruagan clans, like all these different groups are here. Let's see if I can find it. Here's the player's guide. Let me show you all the different groups. Character background starts on page 21. Here. Well, unfortunately, I've lost my ability to. I've lost my ability to jump to a page because basically they took all the books, and there's like 3 books in the box set, and they just kind of crammed them all together. So there's a warrior elf, a first for that time period. Love the art. Let's move it on down. They've got some skills and things. Okay. Here's where we start getting into the backgrounds. So one of the backgrounds is, they're called Antalians, and they're basically Vikings. The next group is called, let's keep going, Beastmen. Yeah, and they have different, they obviously humanoids, they're bipedal, but they all look different. So some of them, they have tables that they roll on. I think that's super interesting. And some of them are furry, some of them have scales. I might have to add Beastmen to my list. And there's a typical beast man. The Blacklore Elves. Descendants of one of the most ancient Elvis races. So they have this special elf group wearing this sort of motley outfit. This looks very Elric to me. What's this other one? The Brute Men. Those are my cavemen. I've got Neanderthals. I'm going with these guys as well. My own version of them. I had forgotten. The Gentle Elves and the Elves of Icevale. I'm not doing a million types of elves, man. I'm not into it. Hootakons. Jackal-headed humanoids. That's interesting. Not doing it. Genites. The Genites are nomads. I think that's a human culture. The Kogalor dwarves. Yeah, we may at some point we may end up adding in the Krugel orcs. They're a yellow-skinned orc variant. There they are right there. I like the porcine orc. I think that's my favorite. Very cool. Cubits. Cubits are a strange race of human-like beings who stand an average of 18 inches tall. This goes back, so the reason that the fairies and the pixies and whatever get these severe multiplier, like fractional multipliers for their stuff is because they're so small. They're, in this case, they're 18 inches tall. 18 inches seems to be like the standard for role-playing game races that are really small. In Earthdawn, it was the Windlings. The Windlings were 18 inches tall as well. There's the Lizardmen. Very cool. There's the Merry Pirates. I like that group as well. And the Millennians. And the Millennians are sort of our ancient Greeks. So I like the idea of this sort of cultural mishmash where you're kind of taking these things together and putting in the Nithians. So that one's they're monument builders. They're Egyptians, basically. I like those as well. So rather than bring them right in there, I think we're just going to just steal some stuff right out of here. For example, the different weapons and armor, or cultural melee weapons, cultural missile weapons, cultural armor. Like, what armor are they allowed to wear? Oh, there's their Tangoro, which are our African tribesmen. Super cool. The Traldar, a heroic Bronze Age race. These are our Celts. These are Bronze Age Celts. And I have the rules for, like, the Bronze Age stuff. And Tunnels and Trolls has even done, like, an ancient... I think they did an ancient myth. I have the Labyrinth module. I have an original one. Where they tried to do sort of a version of a Tunnels and Trolls adventure set in the ancient world. It's really silly, though. They're, like, when you're going through it, like, you meet, like, 12 gods, like, in this adventure. Alright, here we have an adventure book, which includes 3 things plus some adventure ideas, and this is all... The Hollow World is, of course, an actual Hollow World. Alright, moving on. Alright, so just to wrap this up, I had the idea that there should be... I know I nixed the kobold because it's the folklore kobold that can shape change. There's my gnomes. But let's add in... We'll use the regular stats of the kobold minus the shape changing, but we're going to call them dragonlings. And we'll have kobold, in parentheses, dragonling. And we're going to make them also barbarians. So, barbarian Seljuks. Now, making them Seljuks is kind of a nod to my previous character. And Marzook. I had this character named Marzook. So, and it was kind of themed the exact same way. Alright, so that's my idea for right now. Please like, follow, and subscribe. There'll be more role-playing stuff having to do with probably Tunnels and Trolls and the Illeara campaign. And there'll also be, of course, I also do comics and occasionally inking, which I'm trying to learn. And I will talk to you later.